I think it makes a big difference before a teaching or meditation session when we're all together sharing the Dharma, that we really all generate the same motivation. That makes a big difference, so that all of us are on the same page, doing the same thing for the same reason. Yeah? And so that really connects us and enables what we do to become very powerful. So, today we're going to go into chapter 4 of Precious Garland. So, this is Geshe Champa Tepchok's commentary on, he used Gyaltsab Che's commentary to talk about Precious Garland. It's called Practical Ethics and Profound Emptiness. And I'm sure Gelug Rinpoche and Geshe Champa Tepchok were friends. They were at different monasteries, but both in the same, age group, the same cohort, and studied the same texts and so on. Khenze Champa Tepchok was the former abbot of Serajay Monastery. Okay, so he gave a really spectacular teaching, which somebody transcribed. Venerable Steve, if any of you know him, translated it. Somebody transcribed it, and then I had the privilege of doing the editing, and I did it kind of like a retreat, in a retreat setting, just worked on this book solidly day after day, and it was an amazing experience for me, even though editing from oral teachings into written teachings is, you have to think a lot and pay attention to grammar and repetition and all that kind of stuff. But just delving into these teachings was just an amazing experience for me. I admired Nagarjuna before, but I really admired him more afterwards. So I think it would be nice sometime to do a retreat just on this text, as we often do Lamrim meditations, the checking meditations, to do that with the verses of this text, because it's really quite powerful. So the chapter 4 has to do with royal policy. We talked about that last night, and so some of the same verses, I quoted last night, we'll go quickly through those today, and then more in depth in others. But although, we're talking about governmental policy, all the advice that Nagarjuna is giving to the king pertains to us too. And so many people say, well, how can I practice Dharma in my job? How can I integrate my spiritual life with my work life? And the kinds of things that Nagarjuna is discussing here tell us how. Okay, so you have to adjust it. Nagarjuna may be talking to the king about how to choose ministers and generals and things like that. So it might mean for us, if you're in the HR department, how to interview people for jobs in your company, or how to get along with other colleagues, or any number of things. But the advice, you just take it and put it into the settings and situations that you're in, because it applies equally to all of those. Okay, shall we start? So as if I should preface this a little bit. Okay, I can already see I'm going to go off on a sidetrack. Yeah. Nagarjuna is a spiritual practitioner. So when he's giving guidance on practical matters, the guidance is going to be from a spiritual perspective. It's not going to be the guidance that you get from a sociologist or a psychologist or somebody who specializes in communication and conflict resolution or whatever. There's many crossovers with those fields, but the guidance is going to be different. Okay, and I had an experience just a few days ago on my way here. Yeah, I flew from Spokane to Boston, and I was asked to give a talk at the Harvard Divinity School. So I gave the talk, and in the Q&A session, one student raised his hand, and he said, and this is pertaining to an American situation, yeah. He said, I go to many Dharma centers, and there's only white people. I don't see minority people, and I don't see people who look like me. And this kind of view is, I don't know if it's popular here in Dutch universities, but it's very popular in American universities. And actually in the American political scene, it's called identity politics, where you identify with your racial group, your ethnic group, your religious group. So everybody has an identity, and as a result, everybody feels that the broader culture does not respect their identity. Okay? And to some extent, this is very true. If you're African American, there's definitely, or Latino, there's definitely institutional racism, as well as just personal prejudice and bigotry. Yeah, but it's really this thing of, we all have an identity is emphasized so much. And there's an element of, I'm this, and you don't respect me for my culture or race or gender or sexual orientation or religion, or, everybody has some way with their identity, and they feel that they're not being respected by the majority culture. And it's a big thing now, okay? Because in the States, it used to be we're a melting pot and everybody comes and assimilates. That's the idea when I went to college, back in the old days with the dinosaurs. Yeah, I see some of you were my age. We were all, Tyrannosaurus Rex together. But then after that, it was like, no, we're no longer the melting pot. We all have our own individual cultures and ethnicities and so on. And nobody understands and accepts and treats my particular group as they should be treated with equal rights, So everybody's now kind of like at the university, it's like the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male is under attack because everybody, almost everybody, the majority of people aren't them, and they have the power, okay? So this is very popular and a very popular view. And so this student, in bringing up this question, was bringing up this issue, why in Dharma centers does everybody look like the same, yeah? And I talk quite a bit. I give many different answers because at our Abbey, it's not like that. We're like really international and really cross everything, and we don't have special programs for minorities, but other Dharma centers have special programs for minorities, whatever those minorities happen to be. At the Abbey, we don't seem to need it. Everybody comes and feels comfortable anyway. But what was interesting is, when he said, I go to these places and I don't see anybody who looks like me. And I said, why do you need somebody who looks like you? Yeah. And I said, because basically we're all the same. I mean, we go somewhere and everybody does look like us. We have one head, 2 arms, 2 legs, most of us, there's some people with physical impediments, but most of us have that. People look like us. And in our hearts, everybody looks like us because everybody wants happiness and nobody wants suffering. And we're all totally the same in that regard. There's different things that make us happiness. We suffer from different things, but in this wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, we're all completely the same. And the students in the audience they said, you're denying his diversity. You're ignoring his, his ethnic group or racial group or whatever it is. You're not respecting him by saying this. Interesting, I had never really had that kind of comment after giving a Dharma teaching before. Yeah. And then I've been thinking about it these last days, and why did they respond that way? Because what I said was standard Buddhist teaching, isn't it? You've all heard it. And I've been training my mind in this view for decades. So what am I supposed to say? Oh, you're right, these Dharma centers, institutional racism in that, and you should go there and tell those people they don't understand and honor and respect your thing. I wasn't quite sure, what they expected of me. And one person actually later asked me, well, what do we do about institutional racism? Hey guys, I'm a nun, Yeah, I don't do consultation for businesses, but I can give you some ideas that I have. And so the same thing with this. And the reason I'm going off on this tangent is that, I was responding to societal goings-on from a Buddhist perspective, which is going to be a different perspective than other people are going to offer. So Nagarjuna here is going to talk about how to choose ministers, how to choose generals. We talked a little bit last night about prison, caring for prisoners and so on. So it's going to be a very different perspective than if you ask a specialist a secular specialist in this kind of field to comment on this according to the latest kind of theory or way things are being done in society. Okay? So please don't expect me to give standard conventional societal responses. I'm going to be sharing Nagarjuna's teachings, which of course I happen to agree with, otherwise I wouldn't be teaching them. But it's going to be a different perspective. Yeah? And it will push buttons. I mean, just like when I was telling those students, hey, we're all the same. What's the problem? And then I talked about how, I lived in Tibetan culture and talk about not, people not looking like you and not, respecting you, and, because nuns in Tibetan culture, they're like, under that table there somewhere. And, and so I tried to explain, hey, I know what you're talking about, but this is how I deal with bigotry when that bigotry is directed towards me. And this is how I work with my own mind to try and not be bigoted and prejudice myself. But they didn't like my response. Yeah. So I'm prefacing it now that it's, because I don't know what you're going to expect. Because I thought it was a Buddhist society that had invited me to give the talk there. So I thought they wanted that approach. Anyway, we never know. Okay, wake up. Okay, so we'll start with the verses in the 4th chapter, which start with 301. Okay, so so you made this very, very nice booklet with the English translation, the Dutch translation. Please don't let the publisher see this. Okay. So I gave permission for it to be used just for this group, because normally publishers, they don't like when you extract big portions of a published book. Okay. But we won't tell anyone, will we? Okay. Okay. So if the king acts in a way that contradicts the Dharma, or does something that does not make sense, most of his subjects still praise him. Hence, it is hard for him to know what is appropriate and what is not. So we talked about this last night. If you're in the position of power, yeah, you remember your new American slang? Yeah, people want a brown nose and get on your good side. Okay, so they don't tell you the truth. So this works in corporations, in schools, in Dharma centers too. If somebody has power, everybody wants to get on their good side. So they don't always tell that person the truth. They say what they think the other person wants to hear. And that is not at all healthy for an organization. Okay. But Nagarjuna says, even if it is difficult to say something beneficial but unpleasant to others, how can I, a monk, hope to do so to you, the monarch of a large realm? But because of my affection for you, and also due to my compassion for beings, I myself will tell you what is quite helpful but not very pleasant. So we again talked about this last night, that sometimes with people we need to give advice that is wise advice, but it's unpleasant to the ear. Okay. Similarly, sometimes people give us advice that is wise advice, but is very unpleasant for us to hear. Yeah. So if we're on the side of giving the advice that we know is not going to be very pleasant, it's important to do it in a respectful way, let the other person know that we're doing it because we care. Just as Nagarjuna is saying to the king, it's because I care about you and I care about the kingdom that I'm giving this. If we're on the receiving end of that advice and somebody's telling us something that we don't want to hear, pointing out one of our faults, then it's important to listen, and not just immediately become defensive. Yeah, usually Yeah, we hear anything that resembles criticism, instantly we defend ourselves. You don't understand. I did this because of this and this and this and this and this and this. And, we get quite defensive. But it's very important actually just to listen to the person, take it away and think about it. Yeah. And we know our own reality better than anybody else knows it. So to ask ourselves if the feedback that this person gave me is true, then I need to listen to it and make changes. If the feedback this person gave me is not true, then I don't need to become defensive and angry and upset about it. Maybe I need to go back to the other person and explain what the situation really is. Okay? But in either context, anger is inappropriate. Okay? So to try and really listen to what other people say, and then decide for ourselves whether to follow it or not follow it. Yeah. So this is quite difficult. When you live in a monastic community, this comes up a lot, okay? Because part of our training is to help each other. And twice a month, we do confession and restoration of our precepts. So people have to reveal, we all have to reveal all of our misdeeds and messes that we made. And if we don't, and other people are upset about something that we did, then it comes up. Yeah. And so this is, and we're all taught, yes, this is for our own good, and this is how we grow. But sometimes it's really unpleasant. Yeah. But this is the way the Buddha set it up in a monastic community, how we help each other and grow. Yeah. And slowly, after a while, you get used to it. We begin to see that as much as we try and hide our faults, everybody knows them anyway. So we might as well be honest and transparent. Yeah, because it would be, otherwise it would be like me, somebody saying to me, you have a big nose, and I go, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't have a big nose. What are you talking about? Yeah, it's like it's there. Everybody sees it. So, okay, I have a big nose. Now, let's go on. Okay? If it's something I can do something about, then I change it. At this stage of life, I'm not going to have a nose job. So we're all going to have to live with my big nose. But if they were telling me that I was, being angry and so on, then that's something I can do something about, and I have to take responsibility for my behavior. Okay? Okay, the Blessed One, meaning the Buddha, said that at the right time one should say what is true, gentle, meaningful, and useful to one's disciples out of love. Hence, I tell you these things. So Nagarjuna is saying why he's going to say the following to the king, because nobody else would. Yeah, everybody else would just tell the king what they think he wants to hear. Nagarjuna is going to give him good advice. But this is very true. When we need to say something to somebody, choose the right time. Yeah, don't do it when the person's busy and thinking about something else. Don't give them advice when they're angry. They can't hear it. Yeah, wait until they calm down. Okay, and don't give advice when you're angry either, because it turns out not to be advice, but usually blame. And blame is not very helpful. Okay, so say what is true, gentle, meaningful, and useful, and say it out of love and affection. Okay, so don't say things with the intention to hurt someone, to get even with them. You know, this whole idea of an eye for an eye, you know, and revenge, and you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you back. And I am justified in hurting you back. And if I don't hurt you back, then you're going to take advantage of me in the future. So I'm angry and I'm going to get you. That's very often how we're brought up in our society or in our families to think. And this is not the Buddhist take on it, okay? Because from the Buddhist perspective, you know, holding anger and rancor only makes us suffer. Yeah, and you can see it. Yeah? You can see it in families. You can see it in, you know, between countries. You know, a few years ago when everything exploded in the former Yugoslavia, why were people killing each other? Well, because our ancestors 300 years ago were killing each other. So that means that we're enemies. So nowadays, we have to go to war because you're our enemy because of what happened 300 years ago when none of us were alive. Yeah, ridiculous, isn't it? Holding on so much to an identity that we go to war over this. Yeah, it happens in families. Okay. Now, I don't know about your family, but my family, when there's a gathering, you know, a wedding or something like that, making the seating arrangement for where everybody sits at a table is impossible, because this one doesn't speak to that one, who doesn't speak to this one, who doesn't speak to that one. It's so crazy making, yeah. And I remember as a kid looking, and on the level of my grandparents and their siblings didn't always talk to each other, and so therefore I wasn't allowed to talk to those great aunts and uncles or those children, you know, kind of anybody who came from them I wasn't allowed to talk to because my grandmother didn't talk to their grandmother, okay, something like that. Over something, I don't even know what happened, yeah? But anyway, then I saw the same thing happen on my parents' generation. You know, when I was little, the brothers and sisters all talked to each other. Then, you know, this one doesn't talk to that one doesn't talk to this one. They all started fighting, okay? Then all our cousins' generation, yeah, then I saw it amongst my cousins, them not talking to their own siblings. Yeah, it's crazy. It's totally crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And especially in these kinds of things, that's when, you know, because we have the most emotion often with families, because that's where we have the most attachment. And so when we're very attached to people, our anger at them becomes even greater. And so you fight with somebody you're very close to, in a marriage or in a family or whatever, and you say, I am never going to talk to that person again as long as I live. Okay? Have you heard that in your families? Have you said it out loud yourself? And that is a vow you never break. When I say I'm never going to speak to you again, I mean it. I never compromise that vow. But the 5 precepts we take with the Buddha to avoid killing, stealing, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, lying and taking intoxicants, those precepts we renegotiate when it's beneficial for our ego. But the vow never to speak to anybody again, we keep it perfectly. Okay? That's the opposite from the way it should be. Totally the opposite. Yeah. We should keep our regular precepts very well and not have this, hold on to this kind of rancor for other people. Oops. Okay. So, to say things to people out of care and affection, not with the intention to harm them. 305. If you remain steadfast while you listen to a true statement that is spoken without anger, then you will accept what you hear as if it were pure water that cleanses you. Realizing that what I tell you is helpful in this context and others, implement it for your own self, for your own sake, and also for the sake of the world. Okay? So this is kind of what I said before, remaining steadfast when you listen to a true statement spoken without anger. But sometimes somebody may say something to us without anger, but they may say it very forcefully. Okay? Because forcefulness doesn't always indicate anger. It can indicate, strong care for somebody, and you need to get a point across so that they pay attention. In the same way, when we're angry, sometimes we may speak forcefully, but sometimes we are completely passive because we're angry. So remember, anger is what's going on in the mind. The behavior is something different. And one behavior can be motivated by multiple states of mind. One state of mind can motivate multiple behavior. Okay? So, for example, some people, when they're angry, they're the explosive type. Okay? They yell, they scream, they throw things. Yeah. Some people are the shutdown type when they're angry. They stop speaking. They leave the room, go somewhere else, and it's dead silence. Okay. Both behaviors are motivated by anger, but the behaviors are opposite. How many of you are the explosive type? Oh, very few. Oh, okay. How many of you are the ones who who go away and don't talk? How many of you do both, depending on the situation? Okay. Yeah. So I used to think, because I didn't yell and scream. I came from a family that yelled and screamed, so I said, I'm not going to yell and scream. So this was my mother's side of the family, the one where the people don't talk to each other. Okay, so I said, I'm not going to be a yeller and screamer. So I was the person who just left and shut down, went in the other room, cried, and sucked my thumb and felt sorry for myself. Poor me, they treat me like that. Okay, so I would throw a grand pity party. Any of you throw pity parties? Oh, they're so much fun. You have lead balloons. Yeah. Nobody else comes, so you can make yourself totally miserable by yourself. Okay. Pity parties are wonderful. Yeah. So, yeah. So I didn't think I had a problem with anger. And then my teacher sent me to work in an Italian Dharma center, being the disciplinarian of the macho Italian monks. Okay, you got it? It was kind of like Los Alamos, where they were testing the nuclear bomb. Yeah, boy. And that's where I discovered that I had a problem with anger, because I thought because I didn't yell and scream that I wasn't an angry person. Yeah. And then I got there and, oh boy, I could tell you my whole sob story, what these monks did to me. They made fun of me. They denigrated me. It was horrible. And my teacher put me there so I couldn't leave. Yeah. So that's how our teachers train us sometimes. Some of you, did Rinpoche do that with some of you? Yeah? Yeah. My teacher was like, okay, let's put her in the deep end of the swimming pool and see if she can swim. That's how I got trained. Yeah, so that's sometimes what happens, and then we do either sink or swim in the Dharma. Okay, so that now we're on 307. If you do not give away to supplicants the wealth that you gain through previous generosity, then due to your greed and lack of gratitude, you will not obtain that wealth again. In this life, workers will not bear your provisions without receiving their wages, but a lowly beggar, though not paid wages, bears 100-fold good qualities to your future life. Okay, so he's saying to the king, you gained your position and all your wealth through previous generosity. Because as we know, generosity is the cause of wealth. So king, you're rich because of what you did in your previous life. If now, being rich, you then become greedy, lack gratitude and appreciation for others, and are very miserly and stingy and don't share what you have, then you will not obtain this kind of wealth again, because stinginess is the cause of poverty. And he's saying, gee, it's kind of strange. You practiced generosity in a previous life, and that's how you got this wealth. And now you're acting totally opposite to the Dharma and being stingy with what you received due to practicing the Dharma. Don't you think that would be rather silly, king? Rather foolish. Okay, that's what he's saying to the king. And then he's saying, if you hire somebody to do something, they're not going to do it unless you pay them. Yeah. But a beggar or anybody else who comes and asks for help, that person is actually helping you by giving you the chance to be kind and generous. So they say that the bodhisattvas, when somebody comes to a bodhisattva and says, please give me this, please help me, a bodhisattva is so happy, happier than all the arhats in dwelling in nirvana. Yeah? Then, how do we react when somebody says, can you help me? Oh, are you saying something to me? Oh, you want me to help? Oh, I'm very busy, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't help you. Ask so-and-so. I'm quite busy. Yeah, can't do it. Sorry. I wish you well, really, I do. Yeah. But, I have my tea to drink and my biscuits to eat, and don't interrupt that. Okay? So that's the difference between us and bodhisattvas. Okay? But what he's saying here is if we really understand karma very well, then when people come and ask for help, yeah, we say, wow, fantastic, I have the opportunity to create merit. I have the opportunity to help somebody who's been kind to me in previous lives, present life, and will be in future lives. Okay, so this is, you see the kind of training we have to do when we're Dharma practitioners. We have to learn to think the opposite of how we usually think in general society. Yeah, it's swimming upstream. Okay, and they often say, being a Dharma practitioner is like being a white crow. Yeah, how many white crows do you know? Yeah, crows are black. Yeah, so we're definitely not conforming. Yeah, and so sometimes people are going to think we're weird. You know, oh, so-and-so did that to you and you're not going to try and get even with them? No. What's wrong with you? Yeah, you should be angry, you should get even, you should do this and that. Okay? Any of you have problems in your family, with your family, thinking you're kind of strange because you practice the Dharma and don't do what they do? Anybody? Yeah? I had problems. I won't even go into that now. But you're not alone. Okay. Okay. Then, verse 309, always keep your mind sublime and delight in sublime deeds. All sublime effects come from sublime actions. So he's reminding the king about karma here. Okay? Keep our mind virtuous and delight in other people's virtuous. Making sure you stay awake. Any of you ever at His Holiness's teachings in India? Sometimes he'll catch a cold and he'll sneeze and everybody like, because the microphone. Okay, so keep our mind in virtue, delight and rejoice in other people's virtuous actions, because all the happy effects, you know, all the liberating effects are going to come from virtuous actions. Okay, so no matter what other people say about you, no matter what they think about you, keep your mind in virtue. Yeah. And this can be hard because all of us are very attached to reputation and we're very attached to praise. Yeah. We want people to praise us because if other people praise us, then it must mean we're good. Just as if other people criticize us, it must mean we're bad. Both of those assumptions are incorrect. Yeah, what other people think about us is simply their thoughts, filtered through their own self-centeredness. We need to learn to assess our own actions. Like I was saying before, if somebody criticizes us, we listen, but we have to assess ourselves and be honest with ourselves. If what they say is true, we need to change. If what we say is not true, there's no reason to get depressed and blame ourselves. Okay? Similarly, if somebody praises us, there's no reason to think that we're, you know, so fantastic. And if, you know, just because somebody praises us doesn't mean we're wonderful. Ah, shucks. Yeah, I really like to be praised, you know. It's like, oh, it gives me a warm heart. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Actually, when other people praise us, we should not take it personally, just as when they blame us, we shouldn't take it personally. Yeah? If they praise us, we rejoice that they have a virtuous mind. But their praise doesn't do anything for us. Yeah? Because if we don't believe in ourselves, the whole world can praise us, and we still won't believe in ourselves. Yeah? And if we don't care about ourselves and love ourselves, everybody else could say, "You're so wonderful, I love you dearly." We're still not going to love ourselves, you know? So a good chunk of our practice needs to be learning how to see ourselves realistically and learning how to become our own friends. How we need to become the person we want to be so that we could be friends with that person that we want to be. And until we're the person we want to be, we need to have a lot of patience and compassion for ourselves, you know, instead of a lot of criticism and brutal self-denigration. Yeah. And I think for people in Western culture, I think this thing of self-denigration and low self-esteem is one of our greatest hindrances to practicing the Dharma. Yeah, because, we beat up on ourselves all the time. I'm such a lousy person. I'm such a lousy practitioner. Look, everybody else is in samadhi. You know, I'm fidgeting. I can't meditate. This person, you know, can meditate better than me. This person's closer to the teacher. This person is more of a scholar. This person, I'm just such a failure. I can't do anything right. Yeah? This kind of way of seeing ourselves is a big hindrance because all of that self-talk is not true. It's exaggerated. Yeah? So we have to see that, you know, recognize what we're saying to ourselves and check it out and see how, by and large, it is incorrect. Yeah, we have a very hard time knowing ourselves realistically and accepting ourselves for who we are. Do you think? Yeah? So to practice, these are really very deep things that we need to work on. His Holiness was very surprised at one of the Mind Life conferences, maybe about back in the 90s, when this discussion arose about low self-esteem. And His Holiness said, you know, this room full of scientists, and like most of the people were PhDs, and His Holiness says, who has this low self-esteem? And all these people, you know, look at each other and say, well, we all do. His Holiness is going, but why? You're so successful. You're well educated. You have successful careers. Why don't you believe in yourself? And then we had a really big brainstorming session, all sorts of reasons that fed into this kind of low self-esteem. Because the Tibetan way of bringing up children and thinking about themselves is different. Yeah, they don't have the same kind of guilt and self-blame that we do. Yeah, and part of it is, you know, we grew up in a Christian culture where these kinds of things are emphasized, aren't they? Yeah, the worse you feel about what you did, the more you're repenting and making, you know, compensating for what you did. Okay? So the more you hate yourself, the more you're atoning for harming others. What? Think about that. Think about that. Apply some logic to that. Yeah. Does hating myself atone for misdeeds towards others? What good does hating myself do? It doesn't do anything for the person I harmed. And it doesn't purify my own negative karma. It isn't that the more I hate myself, the more I'm purifying my negative karma. Actually, it's the more I hate myself, the more I'm creating more negative karma. Okay? So the Buddha set out a whole system for purifying our mistakes and for making amends. Yeah? And it did not include feeling guilty and hating ourselves. Yeah? The closest it comes in the four opponent powers is regret. Regretting our misdeeds. But regret is very different than guilt. It's very, very different. Okay? When you have an electric stove, and you know how electric stoves, the burner can still be hot, but you don't know it, and you can touch it and go, ah. If you do that, do you regret it?
Sure.
Yeah, you regret touching a hot thing because you burned your hand. Do you feel guilty? No. Okay, so there's a big difference between regret and guilt. Yeah. Regret, we regret it. We understand why we did that negative action. We make amends. We have a determination not to do it again because we've understood why we did it and have applied the Dharma antidotes to that motivation. Yeah. And so we clear it up, we purify it, we learn from it, we go on. Yeah? But feeling guilty and hating ourselves because of it, all that does is keep us stuck. Yeah? I'm so terrible, I'm so bad, I'm so guilty. Yeah, culpa mia. Who's the star of the show when you feel guilty? Yeah? Who's the star of the show when you feel guilty? Ourselves. Ourselves. Yeah. So that kind of guilt is totally self-centered. I am so terrible. Look at how terrible I am. I am so important, I can make everything go wrong. I did this, I did that. Really? Yeah? I'm so terrible, I'm so incompetent, I can't do anything right. I'm so guilty. Yeah? Is that going to purify any negative karma? No, that's going to keep us totally stuck. Yeah? So we have to see how that way of thinking about ourselves is based on untruths. Yeah. Look what I did. It's the most horrible thing in the world. Really? The most horrible thing in the world? Really? Really? You're worse? You committed more negative karma than Adolf Hitler? Really? Well, maybe the second most worst. Well, not even that. Come on. We made a mistake. Let's learn from it. Make amends. Go on. Yeah. Guilt makes everything horribly dramatic. And there's a big sense of I when we feel guilty. Because if I am not the best, then I am the worst. But somehow I am special. You know? And it's a real blow to the ego sometimes to realize that we're not that special, that we can make everything go wrong. And that we're not the worst person in the world. Sorry, you cannot claim that elite status. Yeah. Okay. So it's something we really have to work on. Okay. So now he's going to start with some of the advice for the king. Establish glorious dharma sites and famed centers of the three jewels that have not even been imagined by weaker kings. Okay? So he's telling the king, establish temples, establish monasteries, establish libraries, do what you can to encourage Dharma practice, to support practitioners, because the more people in your land practice, the more peaceful your land is going to be. Okay? So our governments nowadays, separation of church and state, normally they won't do that. Although I think in some countries, I think in Germany, some religious institutions can get money from the state. Yeah?
They religious tax.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it work here? No. Yeah. Also in the U.S. we can't do it. But, so then, it's directed towards the king because he had power and wealth. But it could be directed also towards us, in whatever way we can. Maybe we can't alone build the most glorious place or support all the practitioners, but we can all work together and contribute together and build something, just like all you people did to make this center, And I'm really impressed with the center. It's very, very nice. Not just the physical layout, but the fact that you have discussion groups and that students are active in leading discussion groups and that you really learn from each other. That's really wonderful. Okay? So supporting this kind of thing is good. Yeah. It's better than buying ice cream. Yeah? Oh, somebody just sighed. Okay. It is preferable not to create Dharma foundations that do not inspire an opulent king, because even after you die, it will not be praised. So if you're a cheapskate and, make not very nice temples and Dharma foundations, then other people who are wealthy, and powerful are not going to respect what you've done because you've kept the money for yourself. Yeah. With all your resources, you should make those that for being so exalted, humble and encourage exalted kings and overwhelm inferior kings. In other words, if you build something wonderful and you help the Sangha and you help sustain the teachings, then all the other rich and powerful people are going to look at what you did and say, oh, I should do that too. So you become a good example for others. I guess kings in ancient times competed with each other for building nice Dharma sites. If you have to have competition, that's the best kind, I guess. But that can also get kind of murky. Yeah. Okay, 3:13. Giving up all your possessions, powerless, you must go to the next life. But all that you use for the Dharma precedes you as constructive karma. All of a previous king's possessions come under the control of his successor. So for that previous king, what use will they be for Dharma happiness or fame? For Dharma happiness or fame. And then you receive pleasure in this life from enjoying your wealth, pleasure in the next life from giving it away. What you have wasted by neither enjoying nor giving will lead only to suffering. How could it bring happiness? Okay? So he's saying to the king, when you die, and he's saying this to us too, when you die, you're going on to your next life. Yeah. And all of your possessions, all of your wealth stays here, and your relatives fight over who gets it. True, isn't it? Yeah? You leave a will, but people fight over it. Who gets what? If you use that stuff for the Dharma while you're alive, then you're creating good karma. And that good karma kind of like precedes you in the sense of when you're dying, then you have that good karma to draw on, and those seeds of virtue can ripen and propel you into a good rebirth. Whereas if if we hoard all of our stuff and don't share it, then when we die, it all stays here. We go on alone without any virtuous karma. And so what's going to happen to us? Okay. In the similar way, all of the previous king's possessions, now the next king gets. So, in terms of whatever we have when we die, whoever we leave it to or whoever gets it, it then belongs to them. Yeah. And at that point, what use are all those things to us? Yeah, when we're in our next life, does what we did in this life, does it benefit us at all? I mean, put it this way, if we accumulate a lot of wealth in this life, when we die, does any of that wealth come with us? No. Okay. If we are very strong and we want to be famous this life, and we're famous, and they even write a 2-page obituary about us on the front page of the New York Times or the front page of the Amsterdam main newspaper. Yeah? When you're in your next life, does that fantastic obituary help you at all? Does it? Yeah. If we're born as an animal in the next life, who cares about the obituary for who we are now? It doesn't benefit us at all. Yeah. And we look at so many very famous and wealthy people, yeah, who created a ton of destructive karma while they're alive. Yeah. When they die, it all stays here. They're born, maybe hell realm, hungry ghost realm, animal realm. Then, when they were still alive, they could have used their power, their wealth, and so on to benefit other people, but they didn't. They kept it for themselves, out of insecurity, out of fear, because nobody feels like they have enough money, so we all have to hold on to our money just in case. Yeah, and then that's how we just create more and more causes for more and more rebirths in samsara. So, this is one way. I can't avoid, I've got to talk about Donnie sometimes. Okay, Donnie, our president. Yeah. My president, not my president. Yeah, there was a whole thing after the election, not my president. But I look, so much fame, so much power, so much influence. I won't talk about the means he used to get it, but we'll find out in the newspaper shortly. Somebody like that could do a lot of good in the world. What kind of karma is he creating? Yeah? When you look at lying, The karma of lying, amazing. Karma of cheating, stealing, all sorts of stuff. This person has so much fame and wealth and power, and they're using it to create so much negative karma. And in their next life, this life's going to be like last night's dream. They're not going to have any of it. And only the karma is going to follow them to the next life. And when you think about somebody that you disagree with or don't care for, from that viewpoint, then you can't help but have compassion for them. So if you think of somebody that you don't like, or somebody who harmed you personally, or whatever, and think of the kind of karma they're creating, the kind of rebirth they're going to have, then isn't compassion called for, not hatred? When we really think about it, it's compassion is much more suitable. I was on pilgrimage in China with some of my Chinese friends some years ago, and we were traveling by bus, and we stopped at this, public bus, and we stopped at this one tea stall. And on the wall of the tea stall, there was a big picture of the Gang of Four. And my friends, kind of showed me the picture, and they said, they were Buddhist, of course, and they said, imagine where these people are right now. So here, lower realm rebirth right now, and yet still in this life people have their picture, and some people look at them, with honor or whatever. But all that honor, totally wasted. Doesn't do you any good in your next life. So it doesn't do us much good in this life, so let's not put all our energy into creating prestige and fame and such. Instead, whatever good circumstances we have, let's use them for creating virtue and for benefiting others. So that's what he's saying in these verses here. You receive, and then the last verse, if you enjoy your resources, you receive, pleasure in this life. If you use them to benefit others, you experience happiness in your future life. But if you just hoard them, then you get neither. Okay? So this one, it kind of speaks to me because, I can see so often it's difficult for me to give material things, often because I haven't had very much. When I grew up, I had a lot. But, after I ordained, and I ordained young, I didn't have very much. And so, you're living in India, and you have 2 rupees, and you walk past the beggars who don't have anything, but those 2 rupees are really precious to you because you don't have much, and it's so hard to give to the beggars. So, I had to work a lot with my mind. Nowadays 2 rupees is like nothing, but when I lived in India, 2 rupees was comparatively a lot. So anyway, it's getting us to think about how we use the good circumstances we have this life. Okay, so let's pause here and have questions and comments.
You didn't speak about it, but you mentioned that the Buddha, he was very, 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 that wonders me a long time. You spoke about rebirth as an animal.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how an animal can ever become a human again. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Often it depends on that animal's previous time before they were reborn as an animal, when they were a human being before. They created some virtue. That virtue didn't ripen in the next life. Maybe obviously some non-virtue ripened, and they were born in the animal realm. Then at the end of the rebirth as an animal realm, if, let's say, you're born as a pet, and you hear your owner is saying a lot of mantra while you're dying, and it acts as the circumstance for the seeds of the virtuous karma that you created when you were a human being in a previous life to ripen, then you can again be born as a human being. But it is very difficult as an animal in that rebirth itself to create virtue. Yeah, that's why there they talk a lot about the power of the holy object, because just coming in contact with a holy object puts seeds, virtuous seeds, or seeds of virtue, I should say, on our mind stream. Yeah, so that's why it's good, to say your prayers out loud, the animals and insects hear it, or to play tapes or whatever. Okay.
I was wondering, because I really like that particular text about material possessions. It really speaks to me, because I want to, as a lay person, also minimize my material possessions as much as possible. Do you have any tips for lay people to live more detached from their stuff? Because I have a lot of musical instruments, for instance, and I'm not using all of them.
Then give them away.
Give them away straight away, or just keep them for a while? I find it very hard.
See, this is our problem, I want to simplify, but can I keep it for a while? But I'm not using it. Yeah.
Because I've given away all of my possessions a few times, and then I accumulate more again.
Then you have to look at how you spend your money. Yeah. Yeah. Now, if there's stuff you aren't using, it's very nice to be able to give, because then other people can use them and enjoy, and that beats them sitting in the closet. But it's very hard. One class I was teaching, I gave people, I mentioned last night, the assignments I gave people for being generous. So I gave people an assignment next week to clean out just one closet or one set of drawers, not even your whole house, just one thing, and to give away anything that you haven't used in a year. Yeah, because if you've gone through all 4 seasons and haven't used something, then you probably don't need it. Yeah. So then the next week we come back and people start telling their stories, and well, I looked at the stuff, but I didn't clean it out. I put some things in the box, but the box didn't make it out of the house. I got the box to the trunk of the car, but I didn't deliver it to a charity. Very few people, could actually give it away. And one person told the story that in cleaning out one of her drawers, she found this T-shirt that she had gotten when she had gone to Mexico many years ago. She had even forgotten that she had the T-shirt. She didn't know she had it. But once she saw it, she said, oh, I remember that trip, and it was so nice, and I really can't give that T-shirt away, even though she didn't even remember she had it. Yeah? I mean, this is how our miserly mind works. It's so amazing, you know? I stayed with somebody once, and her basement in her house was filled with boxes, because one day you might need boxes. Yeah. Yeah, so let's start accumulating them now. So we all have our little things that we, you know, kind of accumulate that we don't necessarily use, but there's a certain kind of fear of, if I give it away, then I won't have it. You know, if I give away my boxes, then tomorrow for sure I'm going to need boxes. Yeah? Yeah? Do you have that fear inside? Yeah? It's really amazing how it works. Yeah? So sometimes we just have to slowly overcome it and start divesting ourselves of things. But, yes, I knew there was going to be a but. Yeah.
You have one, and you can give it to someone.
Oh, so,
It's also a way of thinking.
oh, right, so you should,
Don't need too many boxes. So
yeah, so maybe you should save all your stuff and become a lending library yourself. Yeah. So it doesn't mean we have to give away absolutely everything, but, you know, when you see the amount of stuff that we have that we don't use at all, but we can't bring ourselves to give away. Yeah. It's very interesting how the mind works, isn't it? Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in line also has been said, I can understand the virtue of giving stuff away and maybe even resist a bit from going in capitalism. But at the same time, you also see people that go for fame and materialism, like Bill Gates or you too, and that then make a fund or something to give a lot of their money away, and then maybe even be able to help a lot more people than the people that don't have anything from the start and try not to accumulate their wealth.
So shouldn't we all make a lot of money so we can be more generous?
Well, I don't know, but I'm struggling a bit with then what's better, because I can see the good in both of the approaches.
Okay. So, so many people have said this kind of thing to me, and with all sincerity, you know, I want to make a lot of money, and then I'm going to give it to your abbey, I'm going to give it to His Holiness, I'm going to give it to all sorts of Dharma organizations and really help spread the Dharma. So I'm going to work hard and make a lot of money and then use it to support the Dharma. I've heard this many times. Yeah. We have yet to receive $1 from those people. Yeah? Never receive anything. If somebody happens to be rich and then they learn the Dharma and they give things away, that's something else. Yeah? And but to use, you know, when you really think about what a precious human life is and what we can do, then to use our lives simply to make money when you could do so much more with a precious human life is kind of a waste. Yeah. Having said that, if you know, I'm not saying that everybody should be living on the streets and we should all be dirt poor and stuff like that. I'm not saying that. You know, if you have a family, you need to support your family, yeah? And you need to support yourself, because if you don't support yourself and your family, then you become a headache to other people, and that's not benefiting anybody at all. Okay, so you have to be responsible, for yourself and for your family if you're a lay person. But that doesn't mean you need to be extravagant. Yeah, and if you have kids, parents want to give kids everything that they didn't have. But I think one of the best things to teach kids is how to deal with the frustration of not having everything you want. Because no matter what you do in life, you're never going to have everything you want. We're all going to encounter frustration. And so modeling that yourself and teaching that to kids, I think, is a wonderful gift to give to kids, rather than showering them with all sorts of material possessions that they take for granted. Yeah.
Well, on this note of what you told, kids who don't know how to deal with not having everything, and that brings me to the question of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't we have a lot of compassion with him, because he's hurting his own country?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Definitely, we should have compassion for him, and look at what he's doing and the downside of it, and say, this is a lesson for me. Yeah, I don't want, he's showing me how not to be. Okay, so this will be the last question, then we'll stop for lunch.
I would like to ask, if we don't care about what others think about us, I change that thing, and maybe the others will think that we are arrogant, and maybe they eliminate from the society. For example, if I live in the community where is no Buddhist, and I proclaim that I'm Buddhist, so maybe I'll be white grown, eliminated from society. So how can influence?
Okay. Okay. So, lots of times I think we have more anxiety about these things than the situation actually warrants. So to speak directly about this thing about being Buddhist and letting other people know that you're Buddhist, we call it, closet Buddhists. Yeah, closet Buddhists. And, you don't want to reveal it because people may not like you, or they may exclude you, or they may make fun of you, or this or that or the other thing. I think usually our fear is pretty exaggerated, and that we don't meet that kind of response. In the West, Buddhism has a fairly good reputation, except for the people in Myanmar, what they're doing. Outside of that, Buddhists usually have a good reputation. And my philosophy is, if somebody doesn't like me because I'm Buddhist, then is that the kind of person that I would want to be my close friend? Okay? In other words, if somebody is bigoted against me or anybody else for what they happen to be, is that somebody that I would want to become close friends with anyway? Probably not. Then also, what I've experienced is, because you're concerned in your neighborhood if people know that you're Buddhist. I'm very public about being a Buddhist. Okay? Yeah. So public that many people have no idea what I am. Yeah. The one lady on the flight over here said to me, you know, are you a nun? Yeah. Or, no, she said, are you a religious? And I said, yes. And she said, what kind? And I said, Buddhist. But, you know, so people react to me in all sorts of different ways. Sometimes like, what are you? But my experience has been that if I smile back, if I'm friendly, if I'm kind, that quickly dissipates. Yeah. So I don't worry about people thinking I'm a Buddhist very much. What did surprise me when I first became a Buddhist, I was, my parents totally freaked out. It was like, you're becoming a what? It was more because I chose to ordain. The Buddhism was one thing. They didn't freak out so much that, but, you know, kind of this. Doing what? And I remember going to a family dinner, and I was really rather concerned what people are going to say. And it was so surprising for me because the relatives that I thought would be the most skeptical were the ones who asked me the most questions and were very interested in what I was doing. It so surprised me because there was this one brother-in-law, and I thought, boy, you know, he's not going to want. He just asked one question after the other, you know. And so people often say to me when they come to Buddhist classes, you know, I really like Dharma, but how do I express that to my family who is either staunch atheist or staunch in their own religion? And I always tell them, go take out the garbage. Because if you go to your family's house and you take out the garbage and you help your family, they're gonna think positively of what you're doing. Yeah. Especially, I say this to young people who meet the Dharma. You know, like, yeah, go home, take out the garbage. Your mom's gonna go, wow, 30 years I've been trying to get my son to take out the garbage. He goes to a Buddhist course and look what happened. Yeah, Buddhism is wonderful. Yeah? So people see the change in your behavior and they respond to that. So when I say, you know, don't care what other people think of you, I'm not talking about just being flippant and arrogant, like, you know, those people can go to hell, I don't care what they think of me. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, let's not be so anxious about, you know, does everybody like me? What do they think of me? Did I impress them? Do they hate me? You know, that's their business. Yeah. My business is, did I act properly? Am I keeping ethical standards? Am I speaking kindly? That part is my business. Okay? Okay, so we're going to have a lunch break. Do you dedicate now after each session, or do you dedicate at the end of the day? How do you usually do it? Yeah. Rablin Shini de Gempati, Sange Shintabnite Uvargi, Jokunanda Shinacha Paharsho, Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamirya Tayami.